Hey, what's up? It's Symphony here. Subscribe to my brother Mr. Creepy as Hell channel, and when you're watching his videos, make sure you stay in one piece. Peace, peace, peace.
Hello, my name is Michael, and I worked for the government. So did my wife, Belinda. But unfortunately, my wife succumbed to an illness that was strange, and it all came from a strange plant. I'm about to succumb to my illness as well, because I also got infected by this plant as well. It's something that they don't want us to expose, or they don't want us to really talk about, but I want to share this before I croak over and die. So we have to go back about 3 months. Me and my wife Belinda were in a jungle that was in a certain part of the world that I won't mention for obvious reasons. We were there doing some research on the forest and on some plants and everything, and that's when my wife Belinda called out to me. She pointed out to a certain plant that she's never seen before. "Hey Mike, come here for a second," she called out to me with her voice seeming a little bit shaky. I looked at what she was pointing at, and I really could not believe my eyes. There was this weird plant that I've never seen before. I pulled out my phone and I took a picture of the plant, and I uploaded the picture to Google to do a search to see if there was plants that were similar to it. But when I did the image search, nothing showed up at all. There was nothing that looked dissimilar to that plant at all. The best way to describe the plant was the front of the plant had leaves on it, but all around it, it had vines that looked like tentacles. It looked abnormal. Not to mention it had purple polka dots all over it. I'm not even joking. It was a really strange looking plant that neither me or my wife have seen before. You know what? I'm gonna cut this plant and I'm gonna take it back to the lab to do some research on it. Maybe some kind of experiment on it to see what kind of species of plant this is. Maybe it may be a new plant that no one has never discovered before, I told my wife. But she stopped me immediately and told me, "Michael, wait, we don't know what type of plant this is. We don't know if it's deadly or anything. You just don't go picking that off. We want to be careful. I understand you want to do a research on it, but I don't even know anything about this. Maybe some kind of poison or something." "Belinda, don't worry, it's fine. And besides, it's not going to be anything deadly. There's animals that live around this jungle anyway. Don't you think something would have happened to them if this plant was deadly? And besides, how cool will it be? We'll be the first scientists to discover a plant that's never been discovered in humankind before. Don't you want that credibility on your resume as a scientist, Belinda?" I asked her. She just nodded her head and signaled me to go ahead and do what I had to do. So I cut off the plant and I put it inside of a bag. I made sure not to get nowhere near my face, and I had on gloves to make sure that nothing won't happen or I won't get infected with some sort of disease that no one's never heard of. After I got the plant, me and my wife headed back to our tent where our lab was set up at. When we got to our lab, me and my wife both looked at the plant and done experiments on it, trying to see where it came from. As we were cutting the plant to see how it grows, my wife suddenly yelped out in pain. "Hey, you alright? What's going on?" I asked her. "That plant, it poked me or it stinged me or something. It hurts. It stinged me on my wrist." I looked at my wife's wrist, and surely enough, she was bleeding. So I stopped what I was doing to help aid her and to make sure nothing was going to get infected. "Michael, I'm not going to lie, I'm a little nervous. I don't know what this plant is, and we don't know anything about it, or if it has any type of poisoning in it. I don't know, what if it could have gave me something? We don't even know if this is some kind of plant. What if it's some kind of creature that we never heard of before? Some kind of animal that was never discovered? I don't know, I just don't want to get sick with anything, or something happens where if I do get infected with something, there's no cure for it because no one's never heard of it," my wife told me. But once again, I tried to reassure her. "Belinda, you're okay. Trust me, if it was anything deadly, Like I said, all the animals around it would have been dead. It's all good. You're fine. Don't stress over it. But boy, I could have been more wrong. A few days later, my wife came down with a stomach virus. She was throwing up constantly. At first, I thought it was something that she ate, and my wife thought that too. And then she started to have a high fever. And to make matters even worse, she started to break out in strange hives. She had these circle spots all over her body. They were purplish. It was a strange type of infection that I've never seen before. She was coughing profusely as well. But the more strange thing about it, each time she threw up, when I would take out her vomit, because she would have to do it in a trash can because we didn't have any porta potties, I would look at her vomit and I would notice that I would see plant vines in there. I was starting to wonder if Belinda was right and there was some kind of infection that this plant was carrying. Maybe it only affects human beings. But I tried not to let Belinda see my concern. The next couple of days were the same. Belinda kept on throwing up. I would still find plant vines inside of her vomit. But then, on that final day, something really terrifying happened that I would never come to understand. As I carefully was still doing research on that plant, I noticed that the plant didn't seem to die or lose its color like other plants would whenever you pull it out of its root ground. It still stayed the same color. As I kept on looking at the plant and observing it, picking it apart, and looking at the tentacles, my wife screamed. Her scream caught me off to the point I felt a sharp pinch sting on my finger. I already knew that I was affected, but I wasn't really worrying about the fact that I got stung. I got up and went towards my wife's tent to see what she was doing. I had kept her quarantined there for a bit just to make sure whatever she had wasn't viral. And when I got inside the tent where she was at, I yelled. I could not even believe what I was seeing. My wife was laying in the bed and her mouth was wide open, and I saw that same type of plant. It was growing out of her mouth. Her mouth was wide open and the plant kept on just growing. I didn't even think what I was seeing was real. I thought I was dreaming, but no, I was fully awake and what was happening in front of me was 100% real. The plant kept on growing. I could see the tentacles moving. It went from looking green to more reddish greenish. Then I realized one of the tentacles was poking at Belinda as it was draining all of the blood out of her. And then I saw in the front of the plant where the leaves were at, there was a hole. And then I saw some sharp rows of teeth protruding out of it. And then it let out a screeching roar. That's when I realized that there was no way this was a plant. This had to have been some type of creature. I didn't know what kind of creature it was, but I had to hurry and get out of there. I already knew that my wife was dead, but I couldn't move. I was in a state of shock and disbelief as that plant creature came out of my wife's mouth and it began to crawl with all of its vine tentacles moving around on the ground, coming towards me. The tentacles kept on growing. I had to quickly get out of there and had to snap out of whatever shock I was in to save my life. But then that's when I realized I got stung as well. So the same symptoms that Belinda faced, I knew I was going to face them as well. Meaning that eventually a creature was going to grow out of me. And most likely I was going to die from it. As I made my way out of the tent where Belinda was at, I went back in the tent when I was doing my research for that plant. And I noticed that it was gone. I really didn't have time to look to see where it went. I grabbed wherever I could and I ran out of that area where those creatures could be roaming around. A couple of days later, I had to endure a really violent stomach pain. I was throwing up constantly as I was trying to travel as far away from that area as I possibly can. But as I'm sitting here writing this, I can't move any further, and I can feel the life slipping away from me. Before I go, I just want to say one thing to Belinda. I'm sorry I didn't believe you. I should have listened to you and not touched that plant. You were right. But I let my ego get the best of me. And now you're gone and I'm about to lose my life. And it may be a while before someone discovers us dead. I'm sorry.